Then the king will say to those at his right hand, Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you? And the king will answer them, Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. Reverend Dr. Randy Woodley, in his fine book Shalom in the Community of Creation and Indigenous Vision, suggests that it may well be time for us to drop the language of king and kingdom from our Christian lexicon, as the metaphor no longer has direct relevance in our modern context and is also freighted with negative associations. While Woodley's concerns resonate with me, the tension between ruler and ruled is precisely the point of the feast of Christ the King. Exactly what kind of king is it who volunteers obscurity, who condescends with passion to walk among the lowly, sharing their burdens and humiliations, and whose rule paradoxically accomplishes the liberation rather than the oppressive servitude of his subjects? What kind of kingdom is it where the lofty are brought down and the lowly lifted up, where the marginalized are brought into the center, where the weak are heralded as its prized citizens? This passage describes an odd, counterintuitive sort of kingdom and kingly glory, does it not? The sort that modern scientism, famously articulated by Thomas Sprat of the English Royal Society in 1667, claims that can perhaps only be found in the delightful deceits of fables. But I'll take those so-called deceits any day over the relentlessly measured, flat, atomized facts of a pitiless universe where domination supplants dominion, where authoritarianism is mistaken for authority, and where power is leveraged for personal aggrandizement and preferred to self-giving love. Jesus radically redefined the nature of kingship when he said, Whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Tomorrow is a church feast called the Feast of Christ the King. And reading this makes me feel hope for something that is different from what I tend to see rising in the Western church of a Christian nationalism that is, power hungry. It reminds me of one of the earliest nonfiction books I remember reading. I know it came from my church's library out in the country, the really tiny church of East Braintree Christian Community, which still exists and my parents are still members of. And I hear wonderful things are going on there right now. Good on you, East Braintree Community Church. God bless you. From the church library, I read this book called, I believe it was Upside Down, and it was either something that Pastor Klink, I think that was his name, that the pastor recommended to me, or it was something that after being suggested I could pull a book from the church library and read it, that I decided for myself. But I think it was something he recommended, and the book when I finished reading it, like it wasn't a terribly long book, and it was something that I could grasp as a, I don't know, 12-year-old or 15-year-old maybe. It was a book that I basically finished and was like, oh, okay, so basically what this guy wants to say is most people who get into the workplace, who get into business, the business world, there's this tendency to go ahead and do business in such a way where you are the one benefiting the most. You're the one kind of trying to get on top of it all, trying to get the promotions, trying to rise the ranks, and to stay there and benefit the most for yourself as much and as long as possible. And this author is saying that when we do that, we are kind of insulting the teachings of Christ, such as these. And that one of the main components that he was stressing was that you need to lead and teach in such a way that you are always preparing somebody to replace you, that you are essentially making yourself as dispensable as possible so that if you are no longer available, that someone can take your place and do the work as good or better than you did, or that that you are promoting somebody to be above you, to take your place, to do that. And especially this author railed against taking proverbs from the Bible. There's a book called Proverbs that is very good at this, taking them and just kind of spinning them in such a way as to promote modern Western capitalism kind of business. I don't think the author particularly railed against capitalism, but I would say that that kind of fits here. And to stop using these proverbs as like just kind of coatings over top of like very unchrist-like business practices. So I guess reading something like this from Steve Bell and remembering those readings from when I was a teenager is just this great way of coming back to a place of saying, yes, leaders are meant to create leaders, like I've heard someone say recently on Facebook, and that a feast at the end of the church calendar of ordinary time is actually still quite applicable in those ways. Even if we do get rid of words someday of like Christ, of king and kingdom and those kinds of things. So I'll leave it off there and continue this tomorrow because this is getting kind of long. Bless you. Happy Feast of Christ the King tomorrow.